Alright, so this is my Roubo Workbench. This workbench was designed based on two different types of workbenches. The first one being the workbench in Chris Schwartz's workbench book. It's on the front cover. And the second one designed in Roy and Hurl's The Woodwright's Guide, Working with Wedge and Edge. The bench is in the back that he writes about. In fact, you can see my little mock-up of what I thought the bench would look like when I first designed it. Didn't quite look like that, but it turned out really well. Basically, the workbench is made out of southern yellow pine. I made this bench 3 years ago in 2009 and wrote a blog about it on finewoodworking.com. You just go to their website and search Roubo. You'll eventually come up to my blog. It's like a 5-part series blog, building the workbench. And as you can see, it is beaten up and well worn. It's built a lot of stuff out of it over the years. Built kitchen cabinets, a bed. I've any now is bookshelves and bookcases. I've done everything on this bench, and it's seen a lot of use. It doesn't look nice like you would see a typical workbench you'd see in a woodworking magazine, but that's why I built it out of southern yellow pine, 2x10 material from Home Depot, because I knew I was going to beat the hell out of it, and sure enough I did, and it was going to look nice anyway, so I'm not going to waste my money on hard maple or something like that. On the end you'll see my Emirate pattern maker's vise. Now this vise is a great thing to have in a workbench. Some feel that a pattern maker's vise is actually overkill because you'll never use the range of motions that it does. But the biggest advantage that I've had with this vise is when I need to cut a dovetail and use a dovetail saw, ideally you want the work to be a little bit higher than you would just planing the board. This bench is built for the height of my palms, which you typically build a workbench for using hand planes. But when it comes to joinery, you'll see sometimes what's known as a Moxon vise, where it's a vise that they stick a board in and then clamp the piece up higher. What this vise does, it allows me to swing up the head to 90 degrees. So now I have a higher work surface to work from. So if I need to cut a dovetail, I just come up here, put my wood in here, clamp it. Now I'm at a comfortable height. If I was down here cutting my dovetail, it'd be uncomfortable, hurt my back. So up here, it works great. You just cut the dovetails. That's a great feature of this vise. Another nice feature of this bench is this, what I call the peninsula of the bench. The bench itself is 28 inches wide, but in this part right here, it's about 19. It's as wide as the Emirate vise is wide. So I'm able to work on both sides of the bench. If I can work over here, I need to clamp something, I can work on this area. And if I want to put it over here, I have total access, total reach around the vise. But this little peninsula comes in handy when I do stuff like pounding out a peg for a chair or something. I put this little dowel plate here, and I can pound a board and a peg through this hole with ease. I don't have to worry about putting it over here and holding on to it, having the thing fall. It's just a really nice feature to have. Something that's, I didn't think I'd use this little area right here very much because I thought it was just a dead space, but really it's not. It's actually become a quite handy thing to have. If you come around to the front of the bench, you'll see this is the working part of the bench. Obviously you can see where I work the most because this is the dirtiest part of the bench. It's where it gets the most use, so obviously it's going to be the most worn. I have a drawer in here. I keep my bench cookies in here. I got stops, I got tape measures, pencils, everything that I need. My paraffer and wax for planes. Nice little handy drawer. And then I also have the dead man here, which honestly I don't use that too much. I don't plane wide boards a lot, so I don't really have to use this too much, but I do have a little peg I push out, and that allows me to put a board on top of this and just support it from the back. This drawer pushes all the way in, and then this dead man can go all the way to the end. If you notice, I have a dust air cleaner underneath the bench, and the only reason for that is because my ceilings are too low to actually put it on top. It works really well down there. It gets a lot of the dust from the table saw that I have. Table saw extracts dust, and a lot of it goes right to the cleaner. It dispenses right into the cleaner. Over here we have my regular vise that I use a lot for planing, as well as the crochet. When I first built the bench, I was debating on whether to put the crochet there because I thought it was kind of silly looking, but I actually use that thing more than anything else. That is a great handy tool to wedge a board into and keep it from sliding down as you're planing. And I'm glad that it's at the bench. Now the ultimate question is, how flat is this workbench? I built it 3 years ago in 2009. I've never reflattened it with planes or anything. I flattened it first when I built it, but I've never reflattened the surface or resurfaced the top. So let's see how flat this bench remains 3 years later, and we can see that it's still pretty straight. There's a little wear at the edge, but that's not too bad. I'm not building anything for NASA. Slide it down there, and you can see it's still pretty straight. Not too bad. 3 years, never been resurfaced along the length, and it's still straight. Look at that. So the biggest downside with using this bench with a dirty top is when I go to sand something and I put a board on top of the work surface, and I'm sanding down and sanding down. What will eventually happen is some of the dirt and the oils from the bench will go up into the surface of my workpiece. So the easiest way I get rid of that problem is put out the bench cookies. I use these things all the time, and you just put your work surface on top of the bench cookies, and that also prevents it from moving around. These cookies that you buy at Rockler are $10, and they're well worth it. They're a nice little tool to have in the shop. So that is pretty much it. That's my workbench. 3 years later, it's been a real good workhorse. The fact that I designed it so that the legs are tilted out, it works really well when planing. I don't get any kind of movement at all. It's rock solid. It does not move when I plane. And on my blog, I wrote that I use pressure-treated lumber for the legs, and it's 6x6 posts, and they've held up really well. I've had no side effects from using the pressure-treated lumber at all. I just stain them a dark red decking stain, and they've held up really well. No side effects from using pressure-treated lumber, which I kind of got some grief over when I built it, but I knew I was never going to really touch the pressure-treated lumber. I'd always touch the top of the bench here, not the side of the bench. So that's it. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to you later.